Story 1. Intrauterine device. My doctor ruptured my uterus during the insertion. I came back after a few days having sharp pain in the stomach area. She said I am a bit dramatic and to take a painkiller, even when the sonograph showed the intrauterine device is not in the uterus. I immediately went to another doctor who sent me to a magnetic resonance imaging exam and then directly to the hospital. The intrauterine device was next to my bladder. Full anesthesia, laparoscopic surgery. If I had just gone home and become less dramatic, I would be dead now. Story 2. I was just a couple of months old when my mom found me with my face down and not breathing. She screamed, and my dad came and revived me. They called it sudden infant death syndrome. I'm now a healthy 77-year-old. Story 3. I have a fear of doctors, so I avoided them when I really shouldn't have. My husband and I went to have seafood at the beach for Valentine's Day, about 2 hours from home. Driving home, I was in horrendous pain, a pain I'd never felt before, which hit me about an hour into the drive. I had to have my husband pull over on the freeway in the dark so I could throw up. This was 2023, so it was Tuesday night. By Saturday, I still hadn't kept down any food, water, or electrolyte solution. I was out of sick time, so I got up and tried to get ready for work. I had just gotten dressed and was standing in my living room trying to find something when I started peeing. I didn't feel like I had to pee, and I couldn't stop it. It just happened. I started sobbing and ran to the bathroom. My husband knocked on the door and asked if I wanted to go to the hospital now. I didn't feel I had a choice at this point. Turns out my kidneys were shutting down, and my liver was next. Seafood poisoning is a real problem. Story 4. Yes, from twilight sedation for a routine medical procedure. When I came to, I heard a voice say, "She's back." My throat felt like someone had rammed a broomstick down it, and the doctor, anesthesiologist, and nurses were standing ashen-faced in a circle around my bed. Turns out I have a life-threatening allergy to propofol. Ha! Story 5. About an hour after giving birth to my first child, I had undiagnosed preeclampsia that turned into hemolysis, elevated liver enzymes, and low platelet count syndrome. I started clotting yet had uncontrollable bleeding at the same time. I could hear and see the emergency team rushing in and doing their thing, but I was above everyone in a warm twilight state. I had an overwhelming calm all around me and peace. Permanently changed my life. Story 6. Alcohol poisoning when I was 15. Blood alcohol level of 0.42%. I didn't know how you were supposed to drink and thought the goal was to just get as much awful-tasting liquor in you as possible. Had no idea there was an amount that could actually kill you. So I was at a park with friends and we had a big bottle of whiskey and another of tequila, and I was just chugging back as much as I could. When I lost consciousness, one friend called her mom, which saved my life because the others just bailed. She knew she would get in trouble, but I would have died if I hadn't been rushed to the hospital to get my stomach pumped. I also had hypothermia. When I woke up in the hospital, the nurse yelled at me about how stupid I was and how I should be dead. Sometimes when I say I almost died from alcohol poisoning, people are like, "Oh yeah, me too, I blacked out a few times." And I realize people don't understand the seriousness of actual alcohol poisoning. It's not cool or badass. It's embarrassing and scary. In fact, it's really harmful that society celebrates drinking too much. But I also think parents just telling their kids, "Don't drink," and assuming they won't is stupid too. Better they do it at home than in a park, and teach them about how to know when to stop and that it can actually be deadly. Story 7. I have overdosed on opiates 4 different times in my life. The last time it took 3 different doses of naloxone to bring me back. I just celebrated 2 years clean last week, so I am happy to say those days are behind me. Story 8. Giving birth to my son. During delivery, he got stuck, and I had to have an emergency cesarean section. They did not numb me properly, and I felt them cut me open. My body went into shock. I was shaking violently and couldn't stop vomiting. I was screaming and crying, and then everything started spinning, and my vision was starting to go. They got my son out, my partner cut the cord, and then he stopped breathing and flatlined. The doctors saved him and saved me at the same time. Without modern medicine, my son and I both would have died that day. Story 9. I was pinned under a giant inflatable in a lake once. I probably weighed thousands of pounds and was 20 feet in diameter. It's true that when you're drowning, you feel like your head is going to explode. Story 10. I survived a car accident and acidic blood. I'm grateful that we have great paramedics, doctors, and nurses who nursed me back to health. I think having good health is the most important thing to have that people take for granted. Story 11. I was riding a snowmobile through a cornfield when all of a sudden I was on the ground, and the sled was about 50 feet from me where it stopped. A downed fence line under the snow went over the cowl of the machine and caught me just under my helmet, somehow ripping me off instead of just taking my head clean off. That would have been terrible. Story 12. I was approximately 2 to 3 years old and was feeding the ducks from the boat. My younger sister was crying because the ducks came to me, so I was put on a little chair on the riverbank by my grandmother. I stood up to attract the ducks and fell into the river under the boat. I vividly remember 2 fish swimming past me and being dragged along by the current and being scared. Then my grandma dived in and pulled me out. Story 13. When I was whitewater rafting, I got caught under a current after my guide jokingly flipped our raft. I was in the front corner that hit. Since I was too light, I went flying and just got sucked under and came up hurling water. Story 14. I was sleepy while driving late at night. I just missed the rest area where I had intended to take a break. The next thing I knew, I crashed into the guardrail of the highway, hitting a utility pole that fell over and missed the driver's side by a meter or two. I'm glad to have a second chance at life. Always take a break when you feel sleepy while driving. Story 15. Tried hanging myself. Passerby stopped me. Still have some rope burn marks on my neck. I was distraught at the time, but now I am thankful for that stranger. Story 16. A 93-year-old woman turned left from the oncoming lane while I was out on a grocery run on my motorbike. I came out of nowhere and never got an apology. Totaled the bike and could have very easily taken my life. I am not someone to take advantage of situations, so I never sought more than what insurance gave me. I kind of regret it, but that is life. Story 17. My husband made me go to another gynecologist when I was having weird symptoms. I went to the doctor numerous times. My regular gynecologist kept telling me I was fine for almost a year. Turns out I had cervical cancer. I had to have a hysterectomy immediately. I was not able to have children, but it saved my life. Thank God for my smart husband. Story 18. Almost slid off icy overpass. The driver of an 18-wheeler at a stoplight down below got out of his truck. Robbed at knife point and gunpoint made us get on our knees. Thought I was going to die at 16. Story 19. I traveled a lot to Asia in the 1990s, and I think I got one of the first cases of severe acute respiratory syndrome. I came home with my chest full of phlegm and fluid. I went to the doctor and he gave me a chest x-ray and then said, "I don't know what you've got." He decided it was viral pneumonia. I went home. I could only take really shallow breaths. I remember lying down on the couch and blacking out, then coming to. I remember thinking if I don't sit up or stand up, I'm not going to make it. I just felt like I was going to slip away right there. Story 20. Right out of college, I had just gotten my own little rental house. Finally starting my life. I was eating dinner by myself and started to choke on my food. I've never been more terrified. I was living in a little country town and didn't have any close neighbors. I thought for sure that was how I was going to go out. The only thing I could think of was what a dumb way to die. I remembered watching some video about doing the Heimlich maneuver on a chair. I started slamming my body against my kitchen chair and was able to cough it up. I chew my food much better now. Story 21. I was 11 and I went a little too far up from the shallow part of the beach. Didn't know how to swim and nearly drowned. Thank God my brother had eyes on me. Story 22. Yeah, I almost drowned when I was like 10. I got caught in a strong current at the beach and couldn't get back. Some random man noticed and pulled me out. I still think about it sometimes. Story 23. I almost got kidnapped back when I was 6 years old. I remember what happened. There was a masked guy who offered me a free chocolate bar, but the packaging was loose, so I opened it and pulled it apart into two pieces, where I saw 2 to 3 big pills that I could have ingested if I ate that chocolate bar. I threw the chocolate bar at him, then explicitly yelled the word, "kidnapper," and accelerated away with my bike. Turns out, there have been criminal incidents in my area of organ mafia activities spiking and kidnapping children and killing them. This happened in Turkey. It might have been the closest I got to death. Story 24. Oh, also, I nearly died when I had a seizure for the first time behind the wheel of my Jetta. I had one of those aura precursor episodes, psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, and I didn't know what was going on. I flipped my blinker on to pull over, and then I blacked out. I woke up with my car in a low-speed fender bender into a bus stop bench on the side of the road with a police officer and a firefighter reassuring me that I did the right thing and no one was hurt. I say I nearly died because it was 45 miles per hour two-way busy traffic, and I luckily lost consciousness while pulling over versus drifting 5 feet to the left and hitting head-on with a car coming 45 miles per hour in the opposite direction. It would have been like hitting a brick wall at 90 miles per hour. Story 25. The worst time was deliberate malpractice from a doctor. I said I couldn't take most psychiatric medications due to missing an enzyme necessary for metabolization. He didn't believe me and refused to get my medical records. My psychiatrist had genetic proof of this, but they wouldn't reach out. They put in a temporary detainment order until I cooperated, and gave me 2 medications they refused to name. They wouldn't explain what they were for, nor the class of medication, assuming I was mentally unwell at the thought of medications because I informed them of this condition. They were antipsychotics when I've never had a psychotic condition, both metabolized by the CYP2D6 enzyme I was lacking. Anyway, I took the medications and had a cardiac event that night. I spent a week recovering from heart inflammation with an intravenous drip because my blood pressure lingered at 60/30ths. Thanks, doctor. They scrubbed my medical record and never billed me for any of it. Says I took a Tylenol and nothing else. It says I got an intravenous but no blood pressure readings. I never got a bill for the emergency room visit, nor a week recovering in the medical ward, not even the follow-up chest scans. Insurance never billed. It's been like 8 years, and I question how many people helped to cover it up. Story 26. Alcoholism. I was the type of alcoholic that needed to be told very directly that he was going to die. Went to rehabilitation for the first and so far only time. Now 2 years and 4 days sober. Story 27. I was involved in a head-on collision with a guy's airboat that detached from his pickup driving in the opposite direction. Tore my car in half and missed my head by an inch. Story 28. I had a massive stroke at 28 and heart surgery a month later. My wife was told I was going to be a vegetable once they figured out that I was going to live. I am nowhere near being a vegetable. Story 29. Yes, I had a seizure in a bathtub, and I also have cystic fibrosis, and I got some water in my cystic fibrosis lungs and almost died. It was really scary, and I have never taken a bath since. I shower now. Story 30. I don't know if this counts, but at the time I felt like I might die. Some guy stole a car and ran into me when I was biking home, put a gun to my head, and took all my belongings. They left me bleeding and broken on the street at 2 a.m. without my phone to call for help. Some broken bones and bruises, nothing life-threatening. I found out later they shot the guy they robbed before me. Getting hit by a car wasn't fun, but looking down the barrel of a gun was a very sobering experience. Story 31. Steep mountain. Path broken. Unjumpable. Wall to the left made of rocks and stones. Unwall ruinable. Started climbing towards the other side of the path. Loose stone. Rock avalanche coming to crush me and drag me hundreds of feet towards death. Someone I was with, who was still on the edge of the first path, grabs me and pulls me back onto the path and out of the way of the waterfall made of stones. I would have surely died had I been alone or with someone slow. Story 32. Ectopic pregnancy. I was given methotrexate in order to try and absorb the cells, but it did not work. My right fallopian tube burst open. I was rushed to the hospital. They found 1.5 liters of blood in my abdomen. I was in the worst physical pain I have ever been in and was losing consciousness due to blood loss. I was rushed into emergency surgery. Took 2 months of recovery. This only happens in 2% of all pregnancies. Story 33. Got bit by a neighbor's dog as a kid, and when we got to the hospital, the doctor told me he was about a centimeter away from puncturing my lung. Who knows what would have happened? Maybe not almost die, but you know. Story 34. Mine is so embarrassing. You know that game Horseshoes? Well, the rebar stake from that game caused me to have a bilateral tension pneumothorax, meaning I collapsed both lungs. I punctured one lung and ripped my diaphragm. The odds that I survived that, especially given that I was alone and had to crawl 2 football fields while being unable to breathe, are incredibly low. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital, had my thoracic cavity plated, and the plate broke, so they removed a rib and popped one of my lungs again. I was on life support, and my mom had a dream or remote viewing experience where she was doing exactly what I was doing, crawling in the pitch black and crying for help. I also had a profound experience that changed me from an atheist to a believer in a creator, but not in a deity with a bunch of rules who hates gay people or anything man-made like that.